impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
What is that?
Now, ever since the Acolyte trailer dropped about a week ago, I've had a lot of people asking me, why are so many people upset about seeing a red lightsaber? What's the big deal with the Jedi of this time period, about 100 years before the prequels? What's the big deal with them encountering some type of dark side user who has one, and being able to apparently use some type of force energy wave that seems to take out several Jedi at once? I mean, just because someone has a red lightsaber that they could have found for all we know, though they seemed pretty skilled at throwing it, and they're using the dark side and using it rather well, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a Sith. They could be something else entirely, and thus the Jedi could still be surprised by their return in the prequels 100 years later. And first of all here, before really getting into it, I will acknowledge that we obviously haven't seen the show yet, and so we have pretty much zero context for the ending of that trailer with the red lightsaber and the force wave and all that. It could be nothing more than a vision of some kind had by one of the Jedi characters, or even the Sith character, and not something that actually happens. This could all just be clever marketing to show this vision to us in the trailer in order to get people buzzing and talking about the show because they saw a lightsaber being used and then a bunch of other Jedi lightsabers and thus got all excited, even if many are kind of questioning how it's all possible, which could also be exactly what they want. They want us upset or talking about this show so that in theory, people will eventually watch it to have the mystery solved. Is it a Sith or not? And how do they stay hidden, or whatever. However, even if that part at the end of the trailer is a vision or something along those lines, that doesn't actually happen that way. We do know, according to both the trailer and synopsis for the show, that someone is running around and killing Jedi. And no, not just anyone is going to be able to kill one Jedi, much less several of them. It's going to take someone very skilled, either in the ways of the Force, or perhaps a Mandalorian or exceptional bounty hunter or something along those lines. Though we obviously know for the show it is going to be the former and not the latter two. So anyway, what's the big deal here? Why are so many upset by this encounter? Assuming it does again happen, or happens how we see it in the trailer. What if it really is just a different type of dark side user? I mean, it's not like the Sith are the only ones who can ever use or ever have used the dark side. And, well, if you're strong enough with the dark side to be confused for being a Sith, which I'd argue this character seems to be, hell, he almost seems to be on par with Palpatine when confronting Jedi, though Palpatine faced down several masters, and these are, well, they're not masters, are they? Anyway, if you're strong enough with the dark side to be confused for a Sith, you're almost certainly falling into the same types of, shall we say, pitfalls or traps as a real quote-unquote Sith would for using it. In other words, you're basically going to be a Sith in all but name. The same way that Ahsoka is a Jedi in all but name because of how trained and skilled she is, and the moral code she seems to follow. If she were to be encountered and fought by a dark side user that didn't know her story, they would simply assume she was a Jedi, and even if she told them she wasn't, it's not like that would change much from their point of view. Again, she still fights like them, and has the moral integrity of one. So basically, if the Jedi of this time period encounter a powerful dark side user, and even if they don't call themselves a Sith, and it's not like they'd even introduce themselves as such probably, but the Jedi are going to think of them or treat them as essentially the same thing. Because, as I was saying a moment ago, anyone that strong with the dark side is going to behave like a Sith by default, basically, because of the corruptive nature of the dark side. They are going to have been consumed by it and become the epitome of hate and anger, and will kill without thought or hesitation, as well as imbalance the Force in the process. And even if this turns out to be an isolated incident, which it almost certainly will be or has to be, or so you'd hope, and the Jedi kill this mysterious dark side user and are all but positive they were the only one, despite Yoda saying in the prequels there's always two.
Always two there are. No more, no less.
But even if, let's say, the Jedi kill two of these mysterious dark side users and somehow have it all but confirmed they were the only two, which, yeah, in theory, they should be the only two, since we have, of course, the rule of two, and the Jedi seem to know about it somehow. Though if both are killed by the Jedi, where exactly does the next one then come from that will eventually lead us down the line to Palpatine in the prequels. However, something tells me this show is indeed going to end with one or both of these dark side warriors it introduces to us having been killed by the Jedi. But at the end, or in the post-credit scene, we'll find out one of them was training another apprentice in secret, and that apprentice was named Plagueis, or perhaps even Tenebrous, who was the master to Plagueis. And yes, I'm being very serious here. I could certainly see it ending this way. It's even been said by Leslie Headland herself, I believe, that the first season was kind of its own story, that if there never is a second season, it'll still feel complete, but that sure, there's always room or a door open or hints left for another season. She's also recently talked about how she's incorporated elements of the expanded universe into this show as well. Not that Plagueis is strictly from the EU or anything. We have all heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise from Palpatine himself. But it could be that she will take a nugget or two from that book, and that'll set up a potential second season similar to how the book goes, or that incorporates maybe some elements or pieces of it, or most likely just basically disregards it and does its own thing. Of course, I wouldn't expect Lucasfilm to turn my favorite EU book into a series, though maybe I should be thankful for that. But anyway, even if the Jedi are all but positive they got them all these Sith wannabes or whatever they think of them as, it's still going to be, or should be, very concerning for them going forward, and will show that, yes, the dark side can suddenly rise again without warning. And basically during the prequels, or right in The Phantom Menace, this encounter from 100 years ago would be, or again should be, the very first thing brought up. The first thing Yoda should think of or say when hearing Qui-Gon say he has encountered a Sith. He should be thinking about what happened 100 years ago and that maybe they didn't get them all back then. Furthermore, it has to be kept in mind that the big problem with the Jedi of the prequel era is, or seems to be, that they hadn't encountered the dark side in such a long time. So long that they'd become overconfident and complacent, arrogant even. The way Ki-Adi-Mundi says the Sith have been extinct for a millennium very much implies, I would argue, that they hadn't seen anything resembling a dark side user in all that time, and even kind of see themselves as being victorious over the dark side, which is why they didn't notice the shroud of the dark side falling until it was much too late. That's why they couldn't see Palpatine literally right under their nose. How could the Sith be in front of us when we've all but defeated the dark side? And this is then when some will say or argue, well, what if every Jedi who encounters this dark side user is killed by them? Then they, the Jedi of the prequel era, wouldn't have any sort of memory or record of the incident, beyond several Jedi either disappearing or being found dead, and presumably with wounds likely caused by a lightsaber. Though, I suppose something like that could work in theory. It all depends on how it is handled. Though it would be pretty surprising of Lucasfilm to do this, to kill off all the heroes or good guys of the story in the end. Though, no, it wouldn't be the first time they've done something like that. And in that case, with Rogue One, it was done to truly sell the heroic nature of what the heroes in that story had accomplished. In this case, it could, I suppose, be done to really show us the vile nature of the Sith, that they hate the Jedi so much they risked everything to kill a few. I don't know, perhaps something along those lines would work. We'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. Nevertheless, this is the reason why so many are troubled by what we saw in the trailer with the red lightsaber and what the Sith-like character did at the end, though it certainly isn't the only thing troubling some about this show. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about all this. Are you worried about the Jedi encountering the Sith in this time period, or maybe some Sith wannabes, and that it won't make any sense with the prequels? Or are you not worried about that too much, or maybe you just don't care about any of this at all? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.